take a look at our objectives here as we get going. Today's goals is for you to be able to put the events of succession in order. So we're going to talk about what succession is, and then you're going to be able to tell me what order these things happen in and which one of the successions is likely to take place in an ecosystem. And then we're going to describe some effects that human activities have on ecosystems. So we briefly discussed the effect of bringing in an invasive species. We're going to discuss a few others. All right? Ecosystems change all the time. I don't want you to think that it's not normal for ecosystems to change, because in nature, even if there is zero human involvement in an ecosystem, you're still going to see change happen. Okay? These changes can happen from sudden events like a flood or a forest fire or an earthquake or an avalanche or a rock slide or some other natural disaster that I'm not thinking about right now. Okay? Those things happen very quickly and they cause a lot of destruction, and as a result, they are going to cause ecosystems to change and be different than they were before. More often in nature, however, the changes that you're going to see happen are going to be very gradual, and they're going to happen over a much longer period of time. So what that means is it's probably not going to be as noticeable to your human eye that these changes are happening, okay? Because they're smaller processes that happen over a longer period of time. These gradual changes in a community are called succession, and there are two different types of succession that we're going to talk about. Okay. The first type of succession is called primary succession. Primary succession happens in an environment that's not really a fully functioning ecosystem. It's very bare. It doesn't have a lot of life in it already. Okay? So think of like a rocky area that doesn't have soil or plants growing in it. Okay? It's very bare. This is the type of environment where you're going to have primary succession. And what happens in primary succession is we start out with really hardy plants. Things like lichen that don't require a lot of soil or a lot of moisture or a lot of nutrients to grow, which means that they can grow on almost bare rock. And then these lichen go about using their root-like structures and things to break the rock down. And when they die, their matter gets added to that broken down rock and we start to form soils. Okay? And after they do that, then we start to get more plants being able to come into the ecosystem. And as plants come into the ecosystem, more animals can come into the ecosystem because now they're sources of foods. And that is going to grow and grow and grow until we get what is called a climax community, or the community at the peak of its growth, where it's very stable and things are working like they should. You have a fully functional, stable ecosystem. So we start with hardy plants, and then they help form the basis of soil. Then we get regular plants, and then we get animals moving into an area. Okay. This is primary succession. You don't see this happening all the time because, quite frankly, there's not a lot of places on Earth where there aren't already established ecosystems. The second type is called secondary succession. This is a sequence of changes that happens when a community is disrupted by either natural disturbances like those massive disaster events that we talked about, or when humans become involved and kind of destroy ecosystems. Then secondary succession can happen. Secondary succession is similar to primary succession, except that it doesn't take as long because the community doesn't have to start from scratch. Okay, if an area is ravaged by a forest fire, there's likely still seeds left over from the trees that were destroyed and the plants that were destroyed, and the soil is already there, existing and fertile and ready to grow. We don't have to start without soil and nothing for anything to grow in, and we don't have to start with new plants coming in from other areas. Okay, so it's already slightly established, which means that even after a massive event, it's going to recover more quickly. But the same processes will happen where you start with hardier plants that don't need as much to grow, and then when they have established themselves, other plants will grow, and then new animals will come in. So it's always the same order. We start with really hardy plants. They help develop the soil. We get sturdier, stronger plants. Then as more plants come in, animals come in. Okay? So that's sort of the order of events of things that happen in succession. Humans can affect ecosystems. We already know that. We've talked about it a little bit. Let's talk about some of the ways they can affect ecosystems, though. There's lots of human activities that will damage an ecosystem. Activities like construction, right? So if we build a new road through somewhere, we're going to kill plants, displace animals, use up habitat, okay? Logging, okay? Cutting down trees seriously changes ecosystems and not for the better. Littering, so putting things, trash and stuff out into the environment that's not supposed to be there, can cause animal death. But one of the most damaging activities that humans do is pollution. Okay? Pollution can be defined as the addition of any unwanted materials into the natural world. So anytime we're putting anything into nature that doesn't belong there and is damaging to that environment, that's pollution. So littering is a type of pollution, okay? When we release chemicals into water that shouldn't be there, that's pollution. Oil spills are a type of pollution. When we put gases into the atmosphere that shouldn't be there or that are in amounts that are too large, right? Because there are some gases that we make as pollutants, like carbon dioxide, that already exist in the air naturally, but in larger amounts can cause problems. Okay, there's some gases like carbon monoxide that don't belong there that we put into the atmosphere. Okay, all of those would be pollution, and pollution can cause a variety of problems. Okay, pollution can damage air quality. Okay, so pollution puts things like sulfur oxides, hydrocarbons, and soot into the atmosphere. Anytime you're breathing in things that are not meant to be in the air, they can cause damage to your lungs. Okay, so the book talks about one pollutant that we have tried to eliminate, which is asbestos, because when you breathe in asbestos, then it damages the cells in your body, and while your white blood cells try to fight it, it causes damage and can cause inflammation in your lungs. And then also, we now know that it can damage your cells to such a point that you can develop cancer later on in life. Okay, so asbestos we recognized as a very dangerous immediate threat and removed it, but we still put some damaging chemicals into the atmosphere, and we just don't see them as big of a threat yet. So that's something we need to work on. Okay. All of these can be damaging to plants and organisms that breathe them in or that get them on them. Okay. It can also cause acid rain. Okay, so those sulfur oxides that go into the atmosphere and certain types of nitrogen compounds can get mixed with rainwater, and then that rainwater becomes acidic. Now, this is not like you might see in a movie where they get acid rain on them and they begin to burn and melt and it like melts down to their bones, okay? But they can damage metal structures, cause them to corrode faster. They can dissolve limestone structures, or similar things made of other softer stones can get dissolved. And then it can damage plants, because what happens is when this acidic rain gets into the water, it dissolves more minerals than it should and causes those minerals to leach out of the soil, and then those minerals are not there for plants who need them. So it can cause a lot of damage. It can also damage water quality. And this is a big one, okay? Because you know that most of the surface of the earth is covered with water. However, only about 0.3% of that water is fresh water that's in streams and lakes and groundwater that we can actually use and that plants and animals can actually use. So it's a very important factor, and it's in a very limited supply. So anytime we start polluting that and making it damaging or unusable for organisms, that's an issue. Okay? When water is polluted, it can damage the organisms who use it, and then it can also damage organisms who eat those organisms. So it's pretty far-reaching. Okay? It's something we really need to be careful about. Okay, that is where our notes end for today.